Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today I'm joined by Daniela Proust, who's a Global Vice President and Head of Global People Enablement and Growth at Siemens. Welcome to the show, how are you?
Hi, good morning everybody.
Nice to see you. I was just speaking backstage that we both have young children who are bringing home loads of germs and making us ill. So for everyone listening, you have to bear with us today. As you can tell, my voice doesn't sound that great. Daniela, you sound a lot better than me, so that's fine. But before we jump in, how are you, first and foremost? How is the family?
Thank you. Everybody's fine. I indeed also was given the gift of my son who came back from school with something that was walking around in school. So I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm better now. Thanks.
Yeah. My co-founder's like, why don't you just stay away from your kids? I'm like, you can't stay away from your children. Like, how do I not? Like, and especially with Robin, she loves to drink out of my drinks. So she'll grab my water and drink and just give me all of her germs. I'm like, oh, great. This is amazing as well. The joys of having kids. How are you, though, personally? How have you been over the last couple of, it's been a crazy few years.
It's been a crazy few years. I'm good, thank you. I think for me, if you put it in one word, is really pace of change. Mm-hmm. So that says it all. And that's really happening every day. But I got used to it. So for me, it's all about adaptability. And apparently me personally, I can deal with it quite well. So I'm good even in times of rapid change.
That's definitely helpful, given the climate we're in. Your role as head of global enablement and growth. How do you describe that to people in a little bit more detail, your role in the organization?
Thank you for the question, because actually I get that quite often, because apparently it's unusual, this title. Mm-hmm. We did it very intentionally to call it this way. In most companies, it's called probably learning and development or talent management. So it's everything that we do as a company to support and accompany all our people across the world in their own individual learning and career journeys. So it's everything about learning and then development, support tools. It's about performance management. It all falls under people enablement and growth.
Yeah. And I'm sure one thing our listeners will learn from this conversation is Siemens are not afraid of doing things different.
I think we'll explore that, yes.
As well. Tell everyone a little bit more about your background, though, and journey to where we are today, because it's super interesting.
I think my background fits quite well into what we see happening at Siemens, also in the broader sense. It's more an option room. It's far from being a linear career ladder. So I have had stations in sales and key account management. I have been an owner of restaurants very early in my career. I've worked in consultancy, in risk management, in corporate strategy and sustainability. And at the moment, I'm working in the people space. So it's quite a range, which I think gave me an overview and a general understanding of how companies work.
Is this something that came to you, or that you came to yourself? Did someone kind of tap you on the shoulder and said, I think you'd be great over here, or something you personally sought out?
I think that's also an interesting thing for me. I could never have said, to be honest, 20 years ago, I really want to become this in 20 years. It was more, I was interested in topics. I was always very purpose driven and people oriented. So it had to be something where I felt that I can contribute to something bigger that really made sense to me, that I can create value. And I was always very much looking out for, first of all, great people to work with. So an environment where you really like to engage. And for me, it always had to be international. So maybe that's the three things, but that can mean and come out in various ways, of course, right? You can end up in very different companies, sectors, or functions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know another topic for you that's a big passion is sustainable development and its impact on society and organization. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure to engage in that subject rather early on. As you know, in companies at the moment, it's high on the agenda almost everywhere. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago. So I had the pleasure of being one of the first team members of the corporate sustainability office that Siemens founded. When was it? 2009 or something. And we were like a startup in a big company, exploring what does sustainability mean for a company that size and being present in so many markets and technology fields. And I thought that was so interesting and also purposeful and meaningful, because indeed, if you take a look at what impact a company has and how you can contribute to sustainable development of a country, of an industry, of societies at large, this is so meaningful, and you can really take decisions that then have a positive contribution to make. So I'm very passionate about it. I'm very grateful and happy that Siemens takes this topic so seriously. And I also believe a company like Siemens should, because we indeed can influence quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm very passionate about it.
How does that help you in your role now?
Yeah, I think sustainability comes in many ways. That's also what makes it sometimes so fuzzy and difficult. So whomever you ask, you will get different topics that pop up, and you will get different definitions. So that's why the UN tried to structure it into the Sustainable Development Goals, which then turn out to be 17 with, 147 sub-goals, which again, then also makes it very difficult to comprehend, but just shows the nature of it, that it's a systemic topic that covers everything that is interconnected to make this planet a worthy and healthy planet, and makes people happy and be able to live well. So it connects everything. And I think on the people side of things, the topic of learning and education is a fundamental pillar of sustainable development, because it starts with schools, right? If kids have access to education early on, it has such a big impact on their personal lives, but also on what they can become and how they can contribute then to the welfare of their whole country. So for me, it is a fundamental topic. It's the people side of the sustainability topic.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's also a competitive advantage for employability and attracting talent to the organization as well?
I think it is in many ways. I think for the talent market it is. We see that coming up in more and more polls, or when you ask people that are then joining the company as to why they join. It's very often that they say, we want to work for an employer that makes a difference. We want to work for an employer who treats their people well and who gives space. That's another dimension. And also who gives opportunity to learn and grow. That's then again the sustainability part of the people side of things. So it all comes together, particularly for the younger generations. Yes.
Yeah. I think more and more, right? Younger generations are coming in. Actually, not just, I think all generations are looking at this through a lens of, where do I want to be? Is this aligned with my purpose? Is this company doing good as well? And that's kind of top on the agenda for everyone. In the past, it used to be maybe like the third or fourth question they ask. Now it's like 1 and 2 of how important it is for people as well, which is great to hear.
Yeah, but if I may add one thing on that, because I find it very interesting, the connect to your purpose.
Yes,
I fully agree. Just when I think back, we have a format which we call Entrepreneurs Bootcamp. It's like a hackathon, and it's to bring people together who then work on innovation topics internally in a hackathon kind of environment. It's super successful. When they started off with their first pilots, they also started with this concept of connecting the people to their inner purpose and really bringing the sustainability topic onto the agenda. And the outcome was fabulous. But people were so surprised that this was the first question that was asked, because back then it was not so much that people would ask that question in the company, right? So I think we have come quite a way. To me, that's a very positive sign.
100%. I remember when I first got asked that question, and I could not answer it. I was like, no. And it was quite bad, because I remember going home and being like, what is my purpose? Like, why do I do what I do? Why am I in this business? And I think, honestly, that was probably a driver to what ended up making me leave the company and start this company, because I just realized it really wasn't aligned with really what I wanted to do. I couldn't get it out of my head. I think once I opened that box and I thought about it more and more. I was like, why am I doing this?
Exactly.
As well, because before, unfortunately, like many people, it was just about the money, the next job title, the traditional career ladder, and that in many ways, in the beginning, it's exciting, but after you reach a certain level or certain salary cap, it becomes more about your purpose, your why, your values, your mission. And it's hard to explain that now, but when you're younger, you perhaps maybe don't see it, but now the new generation do, apparently. But me at the time definitely didn't. So I think you're very right. Back then it was a question that we weren't used to hearing or answering as well. It's very interesting. How are you using L&D in the organization as an enabler for growth, for a growth mindset, and also to help with cultural change, which is a big challenge for every organization?
Very true. I think we have completely and fundamentally transformed our own learning and development function, which also starts by changing the name. That's, of course, one thing. It's a signal, though, because people enablement and growth has something in it that already says and turns the lens around and says it's about supporting our people along their individual career journeys, and we are not telling them what to do, but we are trying to be there and support them wherever they are. And it comes from our strong belief that we are going through significant paradigm shifts overall, across all countries and across all industries, and it's often driven by digital transformation, not all of it, but a lot of it. And it just means that people, and we are always seeing that in those statistics, right? We don't really know how the roles and jobs of the future will look like. We cannot even anticipate it in 5 to 10 years from now. So that already shows how big the shifts will be of careers. If you do not really know what's going to come, what the jobs will be, then you also have no clue what the competency and skill requirements will be.
Yeah.
So therefore, we have to completely turn it upside down and say, we fundamentally transform the role of learning and development, and we are providing learning and development opportunities in a tailored, personalized way at scale. I know that sounds a bit paradox sometimes, but it's not, because if you consider that people have very individual careers, so mine is very different from yours. We might both have even studied business, but where you are now and where I am now is very different. And therefore, what you would then need as learning and development opportunities are probably fundamentally different. So you cannot just say, just because you have studied business and you have 10 years of work experience or 20, you should now do this course. 20% of that might still apply for you, but 80% you would say, I've seen this before and this is not interesting for me. So that is why we said we have to fundamentally rethink it, and we have to bring learning and development opportunities all together at one single point of entry and modularize it and make it very flexible so that people can pick and choose what is relevant to them at the moment of need, because they know best. They know what they have done. They know their skill and competency levels, or even there we can help them to understand that better. They know their experiences, and they also know where they want to go. And then you can, again, consult and support and help them to find what's relevant, what then supports them to go wherever they want to go. So in a nutshell, I think the learning and development function has a significant role to play in the overall transformation of a company, and also to lead cultural transformation. But it comes a bit indirect. It comes through influencing mindset and behavior, through experiences and communication that you provide. It's not that I now tell you, now you have to do this, and then it's going to work, right? It's subtle and it takes time.
Yeah. And the last point is very important. It takes time to be able to do it. It's a big shift. And is this in reference to also the My Growth program? Because I know that's the name of one of the programs, right?
Yes, so we have put all of those initiatives and, let's say, instruments, experiences that we bring to our people under one umbrella, so that people also can understand what is there to support me and how does it all link. And when does it make sense for me to use what? So to provide some orientation and navigation. And we call it my growth, also to make it really about you. That's why it's my growth. It's
good,
not
very good name.
Yeah. My growth. Then it has three major pillars in it. It starts with an area of things that you can use, which are under the umbrella we call My Growth Self-Reflection. So it has some diagnostic tools and instruments that help you assess what is important to you, who are you, what are you good at, or what are your strengths. We very consciously decided to work with a strength assessment, not with what are you particularly good at. Often it matches, but it doesn't have to. So it's more focusing really on what are your strengths, what gives you energy, what takes energy away from you, and therefore what can help you also to focus on, and what are your needs if you're looking and seeking for a role in a job that actually you are happy, and therefore that you can have a good balance in your work and personal life combined. And that is really important. We are also taking a look then at mental health issues, at resilience topics. All of that is combined under that umbrella. And we see that has taken a lot of attention in the last 2 years, particularly through the pandemic. People are really using these instruments a lot and are very interested about how they can, work with all this digital influence that they are having, how they can organize their own work life in a way that they still take breaks. Because I think we all know that, right? Your calendar is packed, one meeting after the other.
Yep.
And there are mechanisms that are now working differently than 2 years ago. So it's the first pillar. The second one is then the learning bit, which is a huge universe. We have an own experience platform for that, which is called My Learning World, and brings together at the moment more than 200,000 learners at Siemens on one platform.
Wow.
With more than 100,000 learning opportunities, which is why, coming back to what I said earlier, it's a lot. So there it's all about personalization, because it can also be overwhelming.
What LXP do you use, if you don't mind me asking?
So we are working with a company called Infosys.
Okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
And we have built it up. It's now, I would say, running about 2 years, and we have kind of co-developed it with them. Wow. So they have been ahead of the game using it in their own company and wanted to also bring it to the market. And then Siemens is quite an interesting use case, because I don't know many companies that are as complex as we are. So if you start with a company like us, you will face all the challenges and difficulties that
so
you
it's
can.
Very much built for purpose. Like everything else is customized to Siemens.
Well, no, actually, that's the beauty of it. It's not really. It is.
Okay.
We are, of course, customizing, but it's more that we are bringing our experience in and say, look, we would have this kind of requirement in terms of experience, in terms of functionalities. This is the feedback our users are giving us. And then they are building it into their product. So further enhancing the overall product.
Yeah, well, it's cool. We're saying that like it's obvious, but not every partner allows for that flexibility. So it's great that you have a partner that you can work closely with and constantly be improving the experience.
Yes, and I would really like to echo what you're saying. It's a true partnership, and it only works then that way.
Yeah,
it's working very well.
Mm-hmm. And then I think we missed one. Is it? There's a few more pillars in there
there's
as well. Yeah, there's one more. Yeah, got one more pillar.
It's the learning, which is a huge thing in itself, of course, but that's how we bring learning opportunities to our learners. And also there may be one side comment before I jump into the next pillar, because people then think it's only videos. When they hear learning platform, they think, oh, now it's a compilation of YouTube. And it is so much more than that. It is really an entry point to all kinds of learning opportunities and formats. So it's across all topics, from industry, technology, product-specific topics, functional things like concerning your job family, or something that is just relevant for everybody, like communication. So it covers all topics in all different skill levels. So that's why it has to be so many, right? Because it's just so many topics you need to cover. And then you have them in all various kinds of formats, from webcasts, e-learnings, to virtual instructor-led trainings, or to complete longer running programs and learning paths that then take up to a year or longer and end with a certification. And it's the whole universe that is all embodied in that one approach. And that's what I think makes it so powerful. Mm-hmm. And then the last pillar you were asking, it's about development. And there it's that we are supporting our people on what they can do if they want to further develop their career, maybe change role. So there we have things like a concept called job shadowing, that you can say, oh, Chris, actually, I find your job quite cool. Can I shadow you for a day and see how your job is in real life? And that really is a cultural change element as well, because people connect very broadly across the company. You are open to explore things in a function you have never seen before. And you really get a real life experience as to how that job really is. Because sometimes it sounds
great. Yeah.
And it is different when you then are into it.
That's cool. Like when someone does that, how long do they typically spend? Like once a month with that person, or like how? Just out of curiosity.
So this concept of the job shadowing is a shorter version of it. It's normally 1 day. But we are working on other, let's say, concepts in the meantime to also enable longer opportunities. But there are sometimes, since I'm responsible globally, sometimes you also have to decide which topics do you roll out at scale for the whole company, mm-hmm. or which kind of concepts are a bit more niche because the target audience might not be completely all. And so that's always the scalability.
Of course.
Topic you need to,
and also virtually, how do you do that? You shadowing someone virtually, is that even possible? Yeah,
it turns out it works, but of course it is easier if you can join that person right there.
Definitely interesting. I don't even know where to start now after that. There's so much to go into after those 3 areas. What does it look like from an employee experience perspective? How do they find this information, interact with it? Where does it sit? I'm an employee. How do I access this information? How have you made that experience seamless?
It's a good question, and seamless is a very important word.
Yeah.
On which we are working every day very hard, and I don't know if we will ever manage to achieve that. But it's, of course, the North Star. So now we have only touched upon a few of the elements that are there, right? There is more. Mm-hmm. And we had exactly that question that we were asking. So, but how would people now know what to do?
Yeah.
And that is why My Growth exists, exactly for that purpose, to bring an easy to understand umbrella and navigation opportunity. That is why, as a first step for now, we have built, it's an intranet page, if you will, that brings together all of the elements, and it explains the different pillars with all the elements you can use. And it's also already in a very employee-centric way. So it's set up with use cases, like Chris is looking for a new role and is thinking, this or that topic I have heard about, I'm interested in, what could I now do to explore it, whether it's really something for me? And then it guides you through the different elements that might help you. And then you can discuss with your manager or your mentor which element might then be the relevant for you to really pick and try out. So Nice. It's an intranet page. And then it, of course, jumps off to the different things. So it's already the first big step, because also it brings together at one place everything that you can use, even though then in the back end, you will have to jump off to different applications.
Of course.
But I think for now, that's already pretty good.
Oh, it's such a large global organization. You need at least one place, right, to start it. And I think something you and the team have done really well is just building strong brands around each of these initiatives. Like, for example, My Growth, it says what it is, right? But companies do such incredible work with these programs, but they do a very bad job of communicating it or building excitement around it. Like you would with building a product, any product, right? You have to think about the brand, the marketing, and all of those things as well. So I think it's very, very important. What about the communication piece? What have you found to be the best way to communicate this with the employees?
Yeah, I think what you were just saying is exactly it. So when we embarked on My Growth, it was an idea we had about 2.5 years ago. And we were thinking, first of all, we have great things, but nobody knows that they exist, or only in pockets and only just singular. So you would know about one thing, I would know about another. So the first thing was to connect. The second one was to then give orientation when to use what in a useful manner for you, because you're overwhelmed otherwise. And the third was also to influence people that they should try these things out. That's a big cultural topic also, that they feel they have the freedom to use all of this, that there is an enabling environment that gives them the time and the space to explore these opportunities. That is why My Growth is a very simple concept in a way that it's a simple umbrella term. It's a bit like when you think about marketing, you should market the overall product, not each sub-product. You should market Amazon and not the socks that you buy on Amazon. Because then, whenever you want to look for something, you go to Amazon. It's a bit the similar concept.
Yeah.
You go to My Growth, and then you can, from there on, find what kind of element is then relevant for you in that moment. Mm-hmm. So we always start every communication with My Growth. And then we might do a deep dive on a certain issue, a certain example, a certain topic. But it always connects to the overall thing so that people really start using this as an entry point and that it really manifests in your mind. And then when it comes to the communication bit, we were doing that, I think, very professionally with our comms team. And we wanted to build something that is exciting, engaging, and very human focused. So it's much more lively. It's very colorful. It's far from any normally used corporate speak. So the first thing we did was develop a very human-centric design, even though in line with the brand design, but it looks very human. It has an own tone of voice. So the way we approach people is very encouraging. It has a very positive language. It is not that it tells you what to do. It's more like you want to try something out.
It's not like you have to do these things, which then people don't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. It
sounds little, but it's so important because all of that together then brings an impression to people.
Yeah. No. And I asked that question because, as I said, it's where I see most companies fail. They do all of the work that you mentioned, and then they go to the communication piece, and then no one ever sees it because it's not communicated. There's no brand building, everything you just mentioned. Like you mentioned, when you talk about My Growth, there's now a common language. People know exactly what that means. They know what we're referring to, etc. As well. And that takes time, like you said at the very beginning of the conversation, to build that. Many years from now, that will just be common language for people coming into the business. But right now, it's something you're still building on the journey as well. So it's really, really interesting. Within the learning experience platform that you have, I've seen quite a few companies, especially over the last few years, open up all of the content to everyone to give them free reign, sort of democratize the content. Like in the past, you only had this, set of content just for the senior leaders, right? And this content for everyone. What's your approach on that? Can I see everything as a user in there, or can I only see videos and stuff that are only related to my function or my role? Just out of curiosity.
That's a complex topic. I will try to give it.
You see what you understand what I'm asking though, right? In terms of just kind of a bit, yeah.
It's a very relevant one. So I would say both. And I'm saying that deliberately because we are on a journey there. So when I look at Siemens, it's such a big company. Even though I'm heading the global learning function, we have a lot of other internal learning entities that are then specific to a business or a certain job family that have created own academies. So the first point is to connect all of that on one platform. And as the next step, we are also working in the background to harmonize all the business models that are behind and the value flows and the end-to-end processes. That's now a bit technical. But what we did as a first step right away was to decide to take a few external learning libraries that we are working with, like LinkedIn and like Coursera, and to buy those licenses centrally and make them available to all employees. So yes, a large population of the learning opportunities, therefore, is completely free for everyone. And we did that on purpose to lower the threshold, to really, take away the friction between learning and the learner. But as I said in the beginning, on our learning experience platform, all formats come together. So if you then take a longer running program and you want to become a certified software architect, as an example, that needs to be paid. And I think rightfully so, because that is really a very different ball game.
I get it. Yeah. So you are right. Both was the very, very good answer to that. And it makes complete sense, by the way, I think. But having the LinkedIn learnings, of course, areas where people have the freedom to go and search and deep dive and just explore whatever topics they have, right? As well, is so you're giving them the best of both, I suppose. But there's always going to be that journey, because so many companies have that same issue that you're talking about, where they have those sub learning groups or programs that exist in all over the company.
Yeah.
And that's always a big challenge, right? To try and centralize all of that together. It's very complex.
And that's why we are always talking about a learning ecosystem, because I'm absolutely not willing to centralize that. I think that they are the best to own these learnings. They are the experts in their field, and they should really design and also deliver these things and experiences to our people. It's more about connecting it and making them part of the learning system, and that people can find it, Well,
no, I agree, because learning shouldn't live with a function.
No.
It should be owned by everyone.
It should be owned by the one who's the best to run it in respective field.
But you're right. But most of the time they do, but then it's not connected to anything.
Exactly.
So, for example, I wrote my own entire sales curriculum for my sales team for all of the sales training, but that lived in a folder on my computer, and no one could see it or access it in the rest of the. And this is a small example, but there's such a wealth of knowledge and experience that lives in our organizations that isn't connected to the rest of the business. You've done so much great work over the last, or it's an ongoing journey, but what are you most proud of?
I really think this concept of my growth, to see how that comes to life now, to see that people know it and use it, and to see really the ramp up of usage. Because, in the beginning, we have created a strategy and a North Star where we wanted to go, with a strong belief of these paradigm shifts I was referring to in the beginning. But now I can truly see that come to life in numbers. I can see that our people are learning way more often. The numbers are tripling compared to 2 years ago. So people are using learning interventions way more often. Yes, they are shorter, but that means that they are finding what they want to really learn in that moment, or what they are planning then to engage in on a longer term. So that is one thing. You can see people are learning more often, and they are learning across various topics. That's why I think this approach is so strong. As you said, you were working on sales curriculum. So the persons in your team probably would say, this is really important to me. And in addition, I would need a communications training, and I'm interested in food and beverage industry because that's my focus. So then finding all of these elements together, whomever then brings the expertise in, that's where I would say the biggest opportunity lies. That's why I always say it's almost like a corporate memory that is dynamically being worked on. So I'm proud of my growth, and I'm really proud of my learning world experience, because we embarked really on a vision, and now all of a sudden it's very tangible. You can see it in tangible experiences.
Yeah, amazing. And for everyone listening right now, I know they're all probably listening going, this sounds amazing, but I'm sure it hasn't always been easy. And I'm sure there were mistakes made along the way. There always is. What advice would you give to your peers that are listening right now that either on the journey, similar, or about to embark on the journey, similar?
That's a good question. Yes, they are of course manifold. So when I take a look at the ecosystem bit, I think that's very powerful. So really try to connect across topics, whoever owns it, and bring it together in the interest of your people in one place. I think probably the key word there is really focus on people experience, because if you start from there, you design experiences and tools and processes differently. And we try to put ourselves in the shoes of the learner every time, and different things come out. So as an example, last year, we were then investing a lot in, I would say, improving the experience of our learning platform. So we had focus groups, and we asked per survey people across the world to also understand the user behavior better. So what are they using and why? How are they coming to the platform? Why are they leaving? And all of these things are really important to understand, because the game is a very different one. It's not that you book a course once a year in alignment with your manager. It's that people have access to learning all the time, and you have to convert a visitor into a learner every single time. So it's a very different game.
Yeah.
But it's also therefore the principles of how you can engage people and win them over every time are different. So my key takeaway would be focus on people experience.
Yeah, super interesting. And at the same time, I'm sure this is required a big cultural shift in your own team.
Yes.
In the learning function. What would you say has been the biggest challenge that you and the team have faced personally?
I think one of a member of my leadership team would say we have not let one brick on top of the other by transforming our own function. It's radical. He's always saying we switched from soccer to even maybe virtual basketball. So not only from soccer to basketball, it's still a ball game, but it has very different rules, number of players, and a different court. And it is very true. And you have to take your own people along the way to transform it, to then make the transformation happening for the company. So it's quite a step until you then see the impact on the overall organization, right? Several steps in between. Mm-hmm. So what I would say, it starts really with an inspiring mission and purpose, coming back to what we started with. Our people got behind the idea of creating something really new and engaging and inspirational for our people, knowing that would then mean a lot of work going forward, transforming the portfolio, setting up an IT landscape, building new processes, you name it, all of it. But if you have that North Star, then people can understand and relate, and then they can also see what is my part of the transformation, how can I contribute?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very important part. Again, back all the way to the beginning of our conversation, of understanding the why, the purpose, yes, but also each of your team members' roles, yes, and what that role they play and what that means. Well, listen.
And I must say, when you think about it, also 3 years ago could not really see which roles I would need. I have very different roles in my team today than we had 3 years ago. A few of them I could already foresee. A few of them, like experience design, like data analyst, we hadn't had in the learning function in the past, So you also have to drink your own bottle of champagne or a glass of right?
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. Like, I had a call from a chief learning officer recently, and they said, "Chris, do you know any good video editors?" And I was like, "Why?" It was like, we need to hire some videographers and some video editors for our learning function. And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "You don't already have someone?" They're like, "No, we normally use agencies, but now we need to create and constantly be creating new content, that we need full-time videographers and video editors." And I was like, in the past, you wouldn't have had a whole team like that in an organization, in a learning function, creating content in that way as well. So similar to those other roles that you mentioned, I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's definitely a big transformation from where we were before. Listen, before I let you go,
yes,
I want to jump into our quick fire round. before we get carried away, where I'm going to ask you some quick questions, but you only have 30 seconds per question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? What are your hobbies and passions outside of the office?
My family comes first, and I enjoy playing tennis and traveling.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to remember that. So next time you're in the UK, we're going to play some tennis.
Good.
We have to make it happen as well. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about the learning function or HR, what would that be?
Overall or for Siemens?
Overall.
Get rid of HR as a term. I really think human resources still sounds very technical, and I tend to think we should focus on the people side of things.
Yeah, I think everyone listening will agree with you on that one. The problem is it means I have to change my company name now. So we have to rebrand HR leaders. We'll just recall it people leaders and just keep it simple as well.
And think about it. And I don't know if that's so much for you. I think just in a company, it gives a signal.
Yeah, human resources isn't the best. Yeah.
If you treat them as a resource that you allocate or people that contribute, and that's just the wording makes a difference.
Immediately. Yeah, no, I completely agree. How would you say your family and friends describe what you do for a living?
I think that they would say it's about a bit what happens at school, but for whole of Siemens, that mommy makes people learn all across the world. That's what my son would say.
Oh, that's cool. That's actually a very good understanding of that as well. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your family?
For my family?
Yeah.
I want my family to be strong, happy, and feel that I have always been there for them, to support them to whatever they want to become.
Amazing. What would you say is the biggest investment that you've made in yourself?
I think I've constantly invested, because for me, it's not a matter of money. If that's, I hope you're not referring to money.
No, not referring to money, no.
Because I'm a very curious person, which I think lies behind everything around learning and development. So I'm every year I'm looking out to what is the next that I want to get engaged in. And at the moment, I'm considering something around neuroscience. Because I think also the whole topic of the a bit fuzzy learning and development sometimes helps if you have some scientific relation.
Yeah, no surprise there. Definitely very interesting. Who would you say is one person in your career that's had the biggest impact on you?
I think it's probably a person that is living in the United States and who has accompanied me for several years along my journey. She has been my coach in the beginning. She's a close friend now. And whenever I have a topic, I know I can call and I can give all my feelings out and whatever frustrates me. And afterwards, I feel better and I'm really back on top of things. So,
can you share her name? Can you give her a shout out?
I hope she's fine with that. Hi, Shirley.
Okay, shout out to Shirley. So amazing. And then last question, what advice would you give to the HR or learning leaders of tomorrow?
I would probably say it's very important to be authentic, to really put people at the core, because that's the mission, to develop space and to develop the people, each and every one. And I probably would say start by connecting with your own strengths and inner purpose, because that's when you can be at your best.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining. It was a real pleasure. My voice is slowly disappearing throughout the episode.
Oh, not because of me.
Yeah, it's just an excuse to get off the call. Imagine I'm just like, oh, my voice is going as well. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
It's been a lot of fun, and it's always great to speak with you and the team because you're always doing such great work as well. So keep up the amazing work, and I look forward to chatting again soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.